Well, welcome back once again. We will be discussing today about auto scaling in AWS. So first I'll tell you what is auto scaling, right? So let's suppose you have created a EC2 instance, okay, which is a virtual server, or you can say a virtual machine where you can run your workload, right? And suppose you are running a website here, right? And up to some users, your website, your EC2 server was capable of handling the traffic that is coming on your website, right? But after some time, when the number of users went beyond a certain amount, a certain limit, and your EC2 server was not able to handle those users, in that case, you will be required to add another server, right? So that your website is up and more users can use your website or whatever you have developed, right? So for doing this, what the first approach you can take is go to AWS console and create a EC2 template, EC2 server with similar configuration, right? So if less number of servers are required, you can do it manually. But suppose there's peak in your traffic, lot of users have suddenly arrived and they are trying to use your website. In that case, you may need to add many servers, right? So this kind of addition in your infrastructure is called auto scaling. There is two type of auto scaling. One is horizontal auto scaling, where you add new servers in your infrastructure, right? Other one is vertical scaling, right? And this vertical scaling, what you do, you simply increase the capacity of your EC2 instance, right? Instead of adding more than one instances, what you do, you increase the capacity of your EC2 instance. Increase the capacity means, let's suppose earlier it was having 4 GB of RAM with 2 CPU ports, right? And now you want to vertically scale it. So in that case, you can simply change the instance type, right? And instead of having 2 GB, you can change it to an instance type that will have like 8 GB or more than that, right? With multiple CPU cores. Fine. In case of horizontal scaling, you simply add new EC2 instance with similar configuration. But if you're doing vertical scaling, in that case, you can simply increase the capacity of this EC2 instance, right? So let us see how we actually do it on AWS, right? So for that, I'll go to my AWS account and I'll select EC2, or you can also search EC2 on the search bar once you log in into your AWS account, right? And then you will need to scroll down and go to auto scaling groups, right? These auto scaling groups are actually the categories with similar configuration which you will be using for your project, right? If you are using for your project, let's say project 1 or website 1, then you'll be creating a auto scaling group with a corresponding name, right? Like you can say this is auto scaling group for website 1. Similarly, you can create multiple auto scaling groups. Let me create a auto scaling group. Okay, so let's say this auto scaling group I am creating is for my project 1, and I will call it as auto scaling group. Okay, now this auto scaling group will require a launch template. When we say launch template, then that means it is asking you about the configuration of EC2 machine that you want to launch. Okay, and you also need to decide how many EC2 instances you want to create once you have reached your threshold. Okay, so I have some launch templates which I can use for creating this auto scaling group, but I want to show you how to create it from scratch. So what I'll do, I'll go to create a launch template, and then I will name it as project 1 template. Okay, template version, I'll call it as 1.0.0. Fine. I will also add some tags, like I'll say involve, which I will be using for production, right? And I am not using a source template. Source template means if you want to use an existing template, you can use that. Now, the next thing is I want to configure my OS image. That means the EC2 instance which will be created using this template, you have to specify that, right? So let's say I want to create a Ubuntu machine. Okay, or if you're not sure, you can simply come here and you can find all AMIs present. Okay, you can select your architecture. Yes, this, yeah. So here we get the list of our AMI images, and based on the performance, you can select them. Based on the architecture, you can select. Let's say I want to use this Amazon Linux. So I'll select this AMI image. AMI image is actually the operating system that you want to use for your EC2 instance, right? If you need any application which is present or pre-installed in that system, we have option for that as well, right? The next thing I will select is instance type. Okay, so let's say I want to select T2.micro, where we will have one CPU, 1 GB memory, right? Which is available or eligible for free tier. Otherwise, you can select other instance types that are available according to your need. Let's say I want to select T2.large, okay, where I want 2 CPU and 8 GB of memory. Fine. Now I want to log in into this machine so that if I need to troubleshoot something, I can access the machine and do the troubleshooting. Okay. So I can create a new key pair, which I will name as project 1, and I will use this key pair so that I can log in into this machine whenever it is required, right? Next thing is I will have to set up the networking of this EC2 instance, right? So I will be selecting this subnet. So whenever this EC2 instance will be created, it will always be created inside this subnet using this VPC. Okay. I want to secure this EC2 instance, so I can select a EC2 security group, or I can also create a new one. I already have some security group, so I'll be using one of them. Okay. And so we have a warning that this subnet is not available for EC2 auto scaling. So what we can do is we can select some other subnet. Let's say I'm selecting this one. Okay. And this security group is not valid for this subnet. So we are going to use a different security group. Okay. Or we can create a new security group and attach that security group with it. Okay, again, we are getting the same error. So let us change our subnet again. So we will be selecting this subnet. Okay, they are private subnets. They are dedicated to some project. So we cannot select them. So let us select some other subnet. Or let's say I don't want to include a launch template. We will decide later which subnet we are going to use. And the security group, I'll be using default, right? Now we don't have any error. Yes, and I want to auto assign a public IP to this EC2 machine, which will be created automatically. So I will select auto assigning public IP, right? Storage, if you want to add extra storage, you can do it from here. Otherwise, you can simply add resources. Let's say project name. I want to add, not project name, I want to add environment, which I'll be using it for production environment. Let me call it as environment, and I'll be selecting production. Right? You can add more tags, but for now, we will be adding only one tag, right? Then we have some advanced details which you can use. Like if you want to apply some policies or permissions on your EC2 machine, for that you can create an instance profile, right? And attach roles and policies, right? So for now we are going to work with the default one. Okay. So let us create the launch template. Okay, so our launch template is created, and whenever we need a new machine to be created for our project using this auto scaling, in that case, it will automatically use this template and create the EC2 instance. So here now I can use my launch template. So our launch template name was project one template. I'll be using that. And then I will be selecting VPC so that our EC2 lies in that VPC. Okay, a network is always required for any server that you create. Next is I can use load balancer, right? Means if I want to divert traffic to other servers, then in that case, I can set up a load balancer. In that case, if a user wants to hit my website, he will be first hitting the load balancer, and load balancer will decide where the traffic will go. Okay, so if I want to use load balancer, I can use. Otherwise, we can just go for no load balancer. Okay, fine. Then we'll move on to the next, and then we can select the desired capacity. Means how many EC2 instances do you want to be present every time? Okay, so let's say I want to have two EC2 instances, right? So minimum desired capacity I want to keep as 2, and maximum I can have is 4. I want maximum 4 EC2 instance to be created. Okay, and then I will go for all the default configuration, and finally, if you want to set up notification, that means if you want to get notified about a new EC2 instance created in your auto scaling group, then you can add using a SNS topic. I already have a SNS topic, so I will be using that, and it will send me a mail whenever a new EC2 instance is created, right? And now these are the configurations which we can review, and finally we can create the auto scaling group, right? So you can see that currently we don't have any EC2 instance running for our project, but since I have created an auto scaling group, in that case it will start provisioning new EC2 instances, right? And this is the instance that is being created, right? Because we have selected T2.large machine, and our minimum capacity was having at least two EC2 instances. So it should create, or it should provision one more EC2 instance. Once this is created, it will also start creating the other EC2 instance, right? So now, whenever there will be shortage of server, or if my server capacity is full, using this auto scaling group, a new EC2 instance will be created every time, right? And it will get attached to my existing infrastructure, right? So let us wait for them to be created. Until and unless your status check is not passed, you should wait for that. So we'll see. It's still initializing. Once all the status checks are passed, you will see another EC2 instance being provisioned, right? So for creating auto scaling group, the resources that we need is we need a launch template, right? Where we are going to configure our EC2 machine, right? We need to create a auto scaling group which will use this template, and here you can decide the minimum requirement of your servers, right? That is how much servers you require to be present every time when your website is running. So I have selected 2 to be present as minimum capacity and 4 as maximum capacity, right? There are many other configurations that you can do for your EC2 machine, and that will depend on your project requirement. This EC2 instances that are being created, they should be accessible properly, and that is why we have configured them to be launched in a particular VPC, and in a subnet with security group, right? If you want to add IAM roles or instance profiles and permissions to this EC2 instance, you can do that as well, right? So let us see. So one of our EC2 instance is ready to use, and if we want, we can simply connect with that EC2 instance and log in, right? You can use this SSH instruction or the command, and since our key name is project1.pem, so you can go to that location and connect with this EC2 instance if you want to access that instance, and if you want to do something on that instance, right? So our auto scaling group has now been created, and whenever there is scarcity of servers, it will keep on creating new server without any manual intervention, right? So currently it has one instance, but it is still updating the capacity. And after some time, we'll be able to see another EC2 instance created because our desired capacity was 2. Scaling limit, minimum we need 2, maximum we need 4. So it is still updating because it will create another EC2 instance, right? So this is how we create EC2 instance using console, right? But in real time, during your project work, you will always be using either Terraform or Cloud Formation template or some other IAC tools for auto scaling, right? So this is how you work in a project. And if you want to gain real-time experience, you can join us and check how things are done in real time. Instead of going through theories, we work on real projects. Okay. So thanks again. I'll be coming up with new scenarios, and we will be able to see a lot of things that we can do using DevOps and cloud platforms.